Hey there folks, Wrel here. I recently finished playing through the first 10 hours of the Mass Effect Andromeda trial that you get if you pay for an Origin Access membership, which I actually bought just because I wanted to play the trial. They got me. Oh, they got me real good. I've tried to stay away from the reviews and the first looks and the praise and the hate about as much as I could, so I wanted to share my relatively untainted experiences of the first 10 hours of the game with all of you. That being said, there is probably going to be some spoilers in here, so if you aren't interested in any of that, then this video may not be right for you. Most of my time was spent in the single player campaign, so that's going to be the bulk of what we talk about here. Also, this is not a review. This is just sharing some of my experiences. And if you have questions, you can go ahead and leave them in the comments section. So in Mass Effect Andromeda, you play as one of the Ryder twins. You can choose male or female, and you are noticeably younger than Commander Shepard was. Not only younger, but you're also kind of shrimpy, and you're certainly less heroic looking. You get to customize not one, but two characters at the start of the game, because your twin does exist in this world, and you probably want them both to look kind of alike, or maybe not, you know, who knows. Unfortunately, the character customization is limited, and the UI navigation is awful if you're on PC, so it makes the experience a little bit less enjoyable than it could be, for sure. The pre-made faces are all over the place in terms of what races they represent and what facial structures they have. Female Ryder has some decent ones to start out from, but the male Ryder faces are so far out there. You're basically starting from like an ugly guy or an ugly gal and having to work them back into something that looks like the character you'd like them to be. But you do have more default facial structures to choose from in Andromeda than you did in the last 3 games. Now, if you remember Mass Effect 1, 2, or 3, and you didn't use mods to enhance the experience, you probably felt like everyone had a really samey look unless you like really pushed it far in one direction. In Andromeda, there are definitely less knobs to tune, and some kind of questionable, poorly done additions, but you can come out with a Ryder that's much more interesting and reasonable than the Commander Shepard you fell into. During the opening scene, one of the first things that you'll probably find familiar is the view right at the start, looking at Earth from your window as you set off on a new adventure. This scene is immediately reminiscent of the very beginning of Mass Effect 1, where soon-to-be Commander Shepard is doing the exact same thing. This helps set the tone for the game, because Andromeda follows in the footsteps of Mass Effect 1 in a lot of different ways. Instead of streamlining the game into another theme parky on-rails experience like Mass Effect 2 or Mass Effect 3, Andromeda returns to its roots in that it plays up the RPG elements of the first game. It's open with a lot of room for exploration, there's plenty to collect and create, and it gives you a much less restrictive character progression system. Andromeda does try to hold on to the more refined shooting experience that made Mass Effect 2 and 3 so much fun, but I also feel like it takes a step back in that area as well when it comes to the specific mechanics, like as the movement it can feel clunky sometimes to where you have to fight the game to get it to do what you want, and it's noticeably worse in multiplayer based on either latency issues or how the enemies interpolate. It's really weird. I hope they clean it up. The beginning of the game starts off pretty slow, and then you meet your father, Alec Ryder, who is the current Pathfinder on board Ark Hyperion. The setting of Andromeda is that humanity, along with the other residents of the Milky Way galaxy, are leaving to colonize a new galaxy and ensure the survival of the Milky Way races for years to come. Now, to do this, they board a few massive Ark vessels, and then they go into cryosleep for like 600 years, and then they wake up in the Andromeda galaxy. Once awake in Andromeda, they meet up with the Nexus, being a massive space station that acts as a home base from which to colonize a handful of golden worlds, which can support life for each of the different races. Now, the job of the Pathfinder, your father, is to basically shepherd this colonization effort. He ensures that the worlds are all viable, he negotiates with the natives, he handles alien encounters, etc., except that things do not go according to plan. Because if you saw any of the promotional material at all, you know that you become the Pathfinder. What's really cool is that my Alec Ryder is going to be different than your Alec Ryder because his appearance changes seemingly based on how you've customized your character. I won't say mine was a dead ringer, but I could definitely see him being the father of my Ryder twin, especially assuming that your mother kind of made up the difference. Now, your father, as a character, is hardcore. He's N7, he's a leader, he commands respect, and he exudes confidence, and you feel that in a very short amount of time, which is important to help set the stage for your character, because it lets you know exactly what kind of boots you have to fill. Also, the way that they transition Pathfinder from your father to you is touching. It's so much better than I thought it was going to be. When I saw the promotional material that introduced your squad mates and saw that it pointed out Alec Ryder as being the Pathfinder, I was like, why would you spoil that for me? But after playing through it, I was somewhat impressed, and I'll leave it at that. The game's introductory level is fairly well done. It levels you up at the right time, it introduces you to classes and characters' combat abilities where it makes sense, and it lets you roll around at your own pace and explore multiple paths, which eventually lead to the same spot. This is good, because it clues you in on the more exploratory nature of the game, while still holding your hand in a way that doesn't treat you too much like a child, and I definitely appreciate that. What I don't appreciate is some of the corny dialogue, and also the dialogue trigger areas, where you'll pass by some area that forces your squad mate to say something that should be dead obvious by now, but you happen to take like the other route to get to the same spot. If that confuses you right now, it'll make sense when you play. They really needed to polish some things up in this game. Even within the first 10 hours, you can tell that the game was rushed out the door. If you remember how the ending of Mass Effect 3 was received, you'll remember the kind of dent that a rushed game can leave in your experience. And with Andromeda, it's all of the little things that kind of grind on you. Alongside the sometimes excessive or corny dialogue, the bad trigger areas, the glitchy animations, you also contend with clumsy movement, god-awful UI navigation on PC, sometimes stupid enemy AI, and a general feeling that things are just a little bit off. Hopefully this is something that BioWare can patch up before release, or shortly after at the very least, because I see a lot of potential here. But it also has a lot of small missteps kind of early on, and again, this is only 10 hours in. I can only cross fingers that they had enough time to at least finish the game's content. Please, I want a good ending. If that's the case, then I can live with the jankiness of the rest of it. The good definitely outweighs the bad though, as far as I'm concerned. 10 hours in, and the game has yielded some memorable experiences, as well as characters that I can kind of start to sink my teeth into. Cora Harper and Liam Costa are your more generic, hey, you get 2 human squad mates at the start of the game characters. Never really understood why that was such a constant in the Mass Effect franchise, but maybe we'll get lucky and be able to kill one of them off later, who knows. Liam is more excitable than Kaidan or Jacob were, and I'm hoping that he doesn't fall into the same stagnant character traps that they did. Well, mostly Jacob. What's really cool though is that Cora Harper shares the same name as the Elusive Man, who is also known as Jack Harper. The Mass Effect Evolution comics go into the Elusive Man's backstory, and during it, he fights alongside another mercenary by the name of Eva Kore. And if you remember from Mass Effect 3, Dr. Eva Kore is the robotic body that eventually becomes EDI. The real Eva Kore ends up dying in the comics, so having Cora, like Kore, Harper, is really interesting. It's a really interesting continuity that I hope develops into something more in Andromeda. So far I've met Drac, the Krogan, I've met Peebe, the Asari, and Vetra, the Turian. Of those 3, the only one on my team just yet is Vetra. Haven't had too many interactions so far, but it's a character that I'd really like to see develop because she's street smart, but it doesn't seem like she's shady, so I really want to know what drives her. I think that after Mass Effect 1, BioWare really understood just how important the Normandy was to the game. And it was an extension of Commander Shepard and her crew, and it was a symbol of something greater. In Mass Effect 2, for example, Normandy is destroyed, and Shepard is destroyed. Shepard is rebuilt by Cerberus. Normandy gets rebuilt by Cerberus, stronger and better. Your scattered crewmates are united once again under your banner because they're drawn to it, and they're all housed in the Normandy. At the start of Mass Effect 3, Shepard is grounded by the military, meaning she can't fly, she doesn't have access to Normandy, she doesn't have a whole lot of anything, she's just kind of chained there on Earth, because she had to wipe out a Batarian colony to prevent the Reapers from invading through a nearby relay, and she was standing trial. You begin Mass Effect 3 with Earth immediately coming under attack by the Reapers, but at the end of that mission, the end of that first mission, you're reunited with the retrofitted Normandy as a symbol of hope, a hope for Earth, and a chance to shed the skins of your former self and begin anew. It's a really cool thing to pay attention to if you just think about the state that Normandy is in tandem with Shepard. It follows like hand in hand. It's a really cool thing. In Andromeda, you don't have Normandy. You have the Tempest. It's a smaller ship. It's meant to scout the Golden Homeworlds, and it functions to that end. A similar beacon of hope, though, because of some things that happen on Nexus later that I'm not going to talk about, and they make sure that they do cause a fuss about it, but I don't know, I really hope that they carry this into the game later as well. Haven't played enough yet, but I'm looking forward to that. Overall, I am going to close it out by just saying that if you liked Mass Effect for the story, for the experience, and the interconnectedness of the crew and the ship and the universe, you'll probably like Mass Effect Andromeda. Again, this is not a review, but I definitely wanted to share my experiences so far with those who may have been interested. And if this video has been interesting, helpful, or entertaining, please feel free to like, subscribe, tell your friends about the channel. I'd also like to hear your take on Mass Effect Andromeda if you had a chance to play it yet. And even if you hadn't, or if you have an interest in Mass Effect, the universe in general, I have done a Mass Effect trilogy, the whole thing. Mass Effect 1, 2, 3. It took 3 years to finish, but it's on the Casual channel. You can go check it out. That's youtube.com/casualrel. And yeah, and give it a look. Thanks very much, folks. Wrel signing off.